What if humanity's greatest threat isn't war, disease, or chaos, but a silent, invisible poison that's already inside us? A poison so seductive, it disguises itself as wisdom. A force that's toppled empires, rotted civilizations, and now lives in you. This is not a myth. It's a warning from one of history's most misunderstood minds, Friedrich Nietzsche. And if you've ever felt trapped by guilt, shamed for ambition, or told to stay small, this story isn't just philosophy, it's your life. Ever caught yourself making excuses to stay in your comfort zone? You know that nagging feeling when you're about to take a risk, and suddenly your mind floods with perfectly logical reasons to back down? That's exactly what Nietzsche was talking about. And trust me, he'd have a field day analyzing our modern play-it-safe culture. Let's get real for a minute. We've all been those villagers standing there, watching the cracks spread while we convince ourselves that everything's fine. It's not just about actual bridges. It's about every time we choose the devil we know over the devil we don't. And here's the kicker. Nietzsche wasn't just some grumpy philosopher pointing fingers. He was the guy who saw through our collective BS and called it what it was: a sophisticated form of cowardice. Think about how we use social media today. We scroll through countless living my best life posts while sitting in our comfort zones, telling ourselves we're being realistic or responsible. Sound familiar? That's exactly what Nietzsche called slave morality. This weird psychological trick where we turn our fears into virtues and our limitations into principles. But here's where it gets really interesting. You know that friend who's always telling you to be practical or know your limits? According to Nietzsche, they're not protecting you. They're protecting themselves. Because when someone dares to excel, it holds up a mirror to our own self-imposed limitations. And let's be honest, that's uncomfortable as hell. The whole will to power thing? Forget what you've heard. Nietzsche wasn't talking about being a jerk or dominating others. He was talking about that fire inside you, that drive to grow, to create, to become more than you are. But here's the trap. When we suppress that drive, usually because we're scared or society tells us to, it doesn't just disappear. It turns inward, becoming anxiety, self-doubt, and what Nietzsche called bad conscience. Look at how we've built entire cultural narratives around staying humble and being realistic. We've gotten so good at disguising our fear of greatness that we've turned it into a virtue. It's like we're running a massive PR campaign for mediocrity. And the worst part, we're buying our own hype. Remember the last time you had a big dream or idea? Did you share it with someone only to have them help you be more realistic? That's not wisdom. That's the modern version of those villagers, clinging to their crumbling bridge, because building a new one would mean admitting they could have done it sooner. Here's the thing about psychological bridges. They're not just about getting from point A to point B. They're about who we become in the process of crossing them. When we refuse to build new ones, we're not just staying where we are. We're actively choosing to become less than we could be. And that's what makes Nietzsche's message so relevant today. In an age of unprecedented possibility, we're still finding sophisticated ways to play small. We've got more opportunities than ever, but we're still those villagers, debating whether we deserve to cross the bridge while the storm clouds gather. But here's the plot twist that Nietzsche wanted us to get. Understanding this pattern is like taking the red pill. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Every time you catch yourself making excuses, every time you choose comfort over growth, every time you criticize someone else's ambition, you're not protecting yourself. You're perpetuating the very system that's keeping you stuck. So here's the real question. Now that you see the cracks in your own bridges, what are you going to do about it? Because those old certainties, they're coming down one way or another. The only choice is whether you'll be the one who built something stronger before they fell. Remember, the most dangerous bridges aren't the ones that might fail. They're the ones we refuse to build because we're afraid of our own potential. The choice is yours. But now, you know what you're really choosing between. Let's dive into something that'll probably make you a bit uncomfortable. That's exactly why we need to talk about it. You know that voice in your head that always says, better play it safe? Well, Nietzsche had some pretty wild thoughts about that, and trust me, this might just change how you see everything. So, picture this village, right? They've got this old bridge. It's been there forever, keeping them connected to the outside world. But here's the thing. It's starting to crack. Now, some villagers are freaking out, saying they need to build a new one. But others, they're like, nah, it's fine. It's always been fine. Why rock the boat? But check this out. Nietzsche spotted something super interesting about human nature here. Those people who kept saying, wait and see, they weren't just being careful. They were straight up addicted to playing it safe. And that's where things get really juicy. You see, we all do this every single day. We call it being responsible or realistic, but let's get real for a second. How many times have you had this amazing idea, this burning desire to do something bold, and then that little voice kicks in, you know the one. It starts whispering about all the things that could go wrong. Here's what's wild though. Nietzsche figured out that weakness isn't just some passive thing, it's actually super sneaky. It doesn't come at you with a big scary sign saying, hey, I'm here to mess up your life. Nope. It comes dressed up as wisdom, as common sense, as being mature. Think about it. How many times have you heard someone say, know your limits, or stay in your lane? Sounds pretty reasonable, right? But Nietzsche would say, that's exactly how mediocrity gets its hooks in you. It makes settling sound like wisdom. It turns playing small into some kind of virtue. And here's where it gets really personal. This isn't just about some ancient village or their bridge. It's about every single time you've talked yourself out of taking a risk. Every time you've chosen comfort over growth. Every time you've labeled your fear as being practical. The crazy part, we're actually getting better at this self-deception. We've got whole social media movements celebrating staying in your comfort zone and accepting your limitations. And look, there's nothing wrong with self-acceptance. But Nietzsche would be rolling in his grave, seeing how we've turned fear into a lifestyle brand. But here's the real kicker. And this is what Nietzsche was trying to warn us about. Civilizations don't usually die because of some massive catastrophe. They die because people keep saying maybe tomorrow, until there are no more tomorrows left. You want to know what's really terrifying? It's not failure. It's the fact that we've gotten so good at justifying our fear of success that we don't even recognize it anymore. We call it being humble or realistic, when really we're just scared out of our minds of our own potential. So here's the million-dollar question. What bridges in your life are starting to crack? What dreams have you been putting off because the timing isn't right? What potential have you been denying because someone convinced you it was arrogant to want more? Remember, that bridge in our story, it didn't collapse because of the storm. It collapsed because people spent so long making excuses that they ran out of time to actually fix it. And that's exactly what happens to our dreams, our ambitions, our potential. They don't die because we try and fail. They die because we convince ourselves not to try at all. Look, I get it. Taking risks is scary. Building new bridges while the old ones are still standing, that takes guts. But maybe that's exactly why we need to do it. Because if Nietzsche was right about one thing, it's this. The most dangerous thing isn't failing. It's letting our fear of failure seduce us into never really living at all. So what's it going to be? Are you going to be one of those villagers standing around making excuses until it's too late? Or are you ready to start building something new, even if your hands shake while you're doing it? The choice is yours. But remember, those cracks, they're spreading whether you acknowledge them or not. Let's get something straight right off the bat. If you think Nietzsche was just some angry dude with a weird mustache ranting about God being dead, you're missing the whole point. This guy wasn't throwing philosophical tantrums. He was trying to set humanity on fire. And not in a destructive way, more like lighting a match in a room that's been dark for way too long. Think about this. Here's a man who had every reason to give up. Chronic migraine so bad they'd leave him vomiting for days. Couldn't even read his own writing sometimes because his eyesight was shot. Lost his dad young, got rejected by the woman he loved, and eventually lost his mind. But instead of breaking, he turned all that pain into rocket fuel. And that's where it gets interesting, because Nietzsche wasn't sitting in some ivory tower throwing out fancy ideas. He was living this stuff. When he talked about suffering, it wasn't theoretical. It was breakfast, lunch, and dinner for him. But here's what makes him different. Instead of playing the victim card, he looked at his pain and basically said, "Cool, what can I do with this?" Now, let's talk about something that might make you uncomfortable. This whole idea of morality being a trick invented by losers to shame winners. Sounds harsh, right? But stick with me here. Have you ever noticed how often people try to make you feel bad about wanting more, about dreaming big, about standing out? Think about these phrases we hear all the time. Money is the root of all evil. Pride comes before a fall. Who do you think you are? Sound familiar? These aren't just random sayings. They're psychological handcuffs, and Nietzsche saw right through them. Here's where it gets really spicy. Nietzsche wasn't against morality because he was some kind of monster. He was against what morality had become: a weapon used by the weak to control the strong. Not physical strength. We're talking about strength of spirit, of vision, of will. You know those people who always try to drag others down to their level? The ones who call ambition greed, confidence, arrogance, and success luck? Nietzsche would say they're not protecting you, they're protecting their own mediocrity. And the scary part? We've all been on both sides of this, but here's the real kicker. And this is what makes Nietzsche so relevant today. He saw how we've built entire societies around making excellence feel shameful. We celebrate staying humble to the point where it becomes an excuse for never reaching higher. We've turned knowing your limits into a virtue, when often it's just fear wearing a fancy mask. Think about social media for a second. Everyone preaching about authenticity while carefully hiding their ambitions. Everyone talking about being real while really just being really afraid. Nietzsche would look at our comfort culture and see the same old slave morality, just wearing better marketing. But here's the thing, and this is crucial. Nietzsche wasn't telling us to be jerks. He was telling us to be honest about our desires, about our ambitions, about our potential, because he saw that the biggest lies aren't the ones others tell us. They're the ones we tell ourselves about why we can't, shouldn't, or mustn't pursue greatness. The real tragedy isn't that some people choose mediocrity. It's that they try to make it a universal law. They're not content just playing small themselves. They need everyone else to play small too. And that's what Nietzsche was fighting against. So here's the question that Nietzsche would ask you. What fires have you been putting out in yourself because others told you they were dangerous? What dreams have you labeled unrealistic because someone else's fear became your wisdom? What parts of yourself have you been apologizing for that actually don't need an apology? Remember, Nietzsche didn't hate the weak. He hated the lies that keep people weak. He didn't despise suffering. He despised the worship of suffering. And he didn't reject morality. He rejected the use of morality as a chain rather than a ladder. The truth is, your potential isn't just some feel-good concept. It's a responsibility. And every time you let someone else's fear become your fence, you're not just limiting yourself. You're feeding the very system that Nietzsche fought to expose. So maybe it's time to stop apologizing for your fire. Maybe it's time to question those truths that feel more like chains. Because in the end, Nietzsche's message wasn't about being angry. It was about being alive. Really, truly, unapologetically alive. What are you going to do with that truth? Let's cut through the noise for a minute and talk about something real. Something that might make you uncomfortable, but that's exactly why you need to hear it. Everyone's so busy trying to be nice, trying to fit in, trying not to ruffle any feathers, that we've forgotten what it means to truly be alive. Here's the truth bomb Nietzsche dropped that still hits different today. Life isn't about being good or bad. It's about being alive or barely breathing. It's about creating or just consuming, building or watching from the sidelines. Think about it. When's the last time you felt truly alive? Not just existing, not just scrolling through life, but actually on fire with purpose. That thing you wanted to build, that dream you kept quiet about, that mountain you've been staring at but too afraid to climb? Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Nietzsche wasn't telling us to be jerks. He was screaming at us to wake up, to stop hiding our power behind fake humility, to stop drowning our dreams in what-ifs and maybe laters. To stop letting the bitter ones convince us that staying small is somehow noble. Look around you right now. Your life, your dreams, your potential, they're all bridges. And yeah, they're probably showing some cracks. The question isn't whether they're cracking. Everything cracks, eventually. The question is, what are you going to do about it? You've got two choices. You can be the person who sees those cracks and freezes, who starts listing all the reasons why it's safer to wait, why it's smarter to stay put. Or you can be the one who sees those same cracks and starts building something stronger. Here's the kicker. And this is what makes people so uncomfortable about Nietzsche. He knew that most people would choose to wait, to watch, to criticize those who dare to build or climb. He was cool with that, because he wasn't trying to save everyone. He was trying to wake up the builders, the climbers, the ones who feel that fire but keep dimming it to make others comfortable. So here's your wake-up call. That fire you feel, that urge to create, to rise, to become more. That's not arrogance. That's not privilege. That's not toxic anything. That's life itself trying to express itself through you. And every time you apologize for it, every time you play small to make others comfortable, you're not being humble. You're being a coward. The world doesn't need more spectators. It doesn't need more critics. It doesn't need more people playing it safe. It needs builders, climbers, people willing to burn bright, even when others try to dim their light. So, what's it going to be? Are you going to keep standing there, making excuses, waiting for permission? Or are you ready to light up with the fire Nietzsche was talking about? Because here's the truth. That mountain isn't getting any smaller. Those bridges aren't fixing themselves. And your potential, it's not waiting for everyone to approve. The storm is here. The time for playing safe is over. The only question is, are you ready to burn? Listen, if this video got under your skin, if it made you uncomfortable, if it made you question things, then I did my job. Because comfort is exactly what's been keeping you stuck. You've just heard Nietzsche's wake-up call. Now it's time to decide. Are you going to hit snooze again? Or are you ready to actually wake up? Here's what I want you to do right now. Not tomorrow, not when you're ready, but right now, smash that subscribe button if you're done playing small. Not if you're comfortable, if you're committed. Drop a comment below with either I climb or I quit. And yeah, I want you to actually choose. No middle ground, no maybes. The time for fence sitting is over. Share this with someone who needs this punch in the face of consciousness. You know exactly who I'm talking about. That person with fire in their eyes but fear in their hearts. Remember what Nietzsche said? Become who you are. But here's the part people forget. You've got to dare to want it first. You've got to be willing to burn. So what's it going to be? Are you a climber or a quitter? A builder or a bystander? The next move is yours. Make it count. See you in the next video.